Hi, we welcome everybody to the next installment of the Coptic class. We have with us, as always, Dr. Joseph Sidrak, and he will continue with the habitual negative tense. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Sidrak, and we'll get us started with prayer. Go ahead, Joe, whenever you're ready.
هنفرعنا مفيوت بشيري نبنم مطواب ونوتي نوت أمين جاب نيوت تخني في قوي معرف توفون جاب كران مارس إيم جتك متقورو بيت هناك معرف شوبي إم فريت خانت فا نمهي جن بيكاهي بن أوي كنت راستي نيف نانم فوو وو كان يتيرو نان إيفول إم فريتي هون انتنكو إيفول إني إتاو هون انتان إرو وو إمبرنت نخون بيرازموس الله نهمين إيفول هافي بتهو خند خريستوس إيسوس بن شويس جثوك تات متورو نمتيغوم نمبياو شاين تنينه تيروامين خنفران مفيوت نبشيري نبتنما ثواب ونوتي نوت أمين. Okay, welcome back everybody, and we're going to get started here on the next lesson. And let me get over to the correct page here. Let's see. So this week's lesson, we're going to be studying several tenses. We studied the habitual tense, but now we're going to study today the negative of that. We're also going to study a certain verb tense that means before or not yet, and we'll go over that. And there's also a couple of other types of tenses that we're going to use. Ethre with an E, and ethre with just a jinkim and no E. And we're going to see that how that means like in order that. And this is the causative, to make or cause something to happen. We're going to go over those details. And then kind of some variations of ethre. But once you figure out the concept of ethre, then it'll make more sense. And that's it. That's what we're going to cover for today. So we'll just review a little bit of last week's lesson. So just as a review from last week, we talked about the two different verb prefixes. The relative, which means when, and basically it's like the relative it prefixed to the past tense, basically. So it, I, nav, that means when I saw. Itak, itare. Remember, basically, this is the past tense here, so we're not really learning a whole lot or changing a whole lot. It's the same thing, and we're going to see this again today in today's lesson. But we're just adding this it in front, and that then changes the meaning a little bit. Then we studied the optative, mare, and we talked about mari, and again how marek and mare don't really exist, and for the second person singular, but they're put here basically for completeness sake. If you're going to have anything that has the second person singular, and the optative, it's actually going to be what we studied the week before, the definitive, what they call the definitive future tense, or some people call it the third future. Oops, went back too far, sorry. And this has been fixed here, so ek, e, and ere are basically, you can remove these basically and plug them into the optative table for the second person. And then we went through the format of the conjugation. Mari, so here's the Yoda. Marik, mare, marif, maris, marin, maratin, and maru. And then we went through some examples of it. Then we also did the conditional, the affirmative of the conditional, and the negative of the conditional. So basically, it's the same thing. It's the past tense, I, are, us, aratin, of, but then you also have shan with it. And we talked about ari pamedi obashois akshan I khintik uru. So make my thought, O my Lord, upon the condition of you coming into your kingdom. So in other words, also say when or if. Ishok anshan irab salim. Whenever we sing psalms. And then the negative of it is, instead of Aishan, it's I ishtim. So instead of Shan, you have ishtim. I ishtim, ak ishtim, ar ishtim, af ishtim, as ishtim, an ishtim, aratin ishtim, and av ishtim. So it's the same thing, but instead of Shan, you put ishtim. And it means if you don't do this, or when this does not happen, or upon the condition something does not happen, then the next thing. So ak ishtim is chai. So it means if you don't write in piosh, the lesson, pirefti ezvo, mashari ero. The teacher, he will hit you. So you see the affirmative of the conditional a lot. The negative, you'll see it occasionally, not too often, but you'll see it. So it's good to be aware of it. And that's what we studied last time. And today we're going to take a few more verb tenses. I know kind of when the author made this book, in the last few chapters, he just kind of threw in everything that he couldn't really fit into other sections. But it's hopefully by now we've learned the concepts and the paradigms and the patterns, that it's not, hopefully not as complicated as it was during the first couple of semesters. So we talked about the habitual tense before, which is the share, shai, shak, share, shaf, shas, sharetin, and sharu. The negative of that is, again, it's the same thing except instead of the shai in the beginning, you have jinkem, may, and p instead of the shai. So, but other than that, it's the same conjugation pattern. Empai instead of shai, empak instead of shak, empara instead of shai, and so on. So you're just changing those two letters, and it's again the same pattern. So empai su means to drink. Empak su, you don't drink, habitually. Empare, empaf, empas, empan, emparaten, empav. And again, these are, the pre-pronominal or the pre-pronoun forms, but the full form or the pre-nominal form of the tense, if your pre-nominal means the noun, the name. So whenever you're prefixing it to a name or some proper, person, place, or thing, then you're going to use this full form, which again, remember we talked about how that usually corresponds to the second person feminine singular. So same thing over here on this other side, empate and empate. Okay, so that's the negative of the habitual. Then we're going to talk about this tense here that means before. So like before something happens, then, well, you'll see some examples that'll be more clear. But it's essentially the same thing as the present tense. So you're going to see T, ek, te, f, s, n, or ten, I should say, ten, teten, and then instead of se, it has tu. So it's like the conjunctive too, actually, is probably better. So, but we'll go through the meaning of this one here. So don't get confused with empai and empati. So let's take some examples here that they've included in the book for us, okay? Empav of ishtim ya totu. Empav, so we just studied that. That's the negative of the habitual. Uum means to eat. So they habitually eat not. So they don't habitually eat. And again, you don't really translate the habitually, but it's just kind of understood in English that it means as kind of a habit or typical thing or an inherent truth, as we talked about. So you can say inherently or generally or habitually. They do not eat of ishtim. Remember we talked about this. This is the negative of the conditional. So ishtim means if they don't. So we've got two negatives. They don't eat habitually. If they don't, and yeah means to wash, and totu means their hands. Tot is hands, and the o epsilon, again, it's the third person plural. So, this would be like tot, tot, toti, tot, tots, toten, centino, and totu. So impav uum of ishtim ya totu. So they do not eat habitually, negative, of ishtim ya, if they do not wash totu, their hands. Impare, again, this is the full form or the pre-nominal form instead of the pre-pronominal form of this tense, because we're not prefixing it to this pronoun, but we're now prefixing it to this whole noun. So that's why it's nominal instead of pronominal, or in other words, noun instead of pronoun. So impare, ni Judai. So the negative of the habitual, the Jews. So the Jews do not mogt. What's mogt? Mogt means to mix or mingle. So the Jews do not mix or mingle nem with ni Samarites, the Samaritans. So the Jews do not mix with the Samaritans. And again, it's the habitual tense. So that means it's an inherent truth. It's just kind of just something that's kind of accepted. Back then at the time, that the Jews would not mix with or mingle with the Samaritans. So empare, ni Judai, mogt, nem ni Samarites. Okay, then we're going to take another couple of examples here. Ofiet emi in namokmek empatu shopi. O, it's just a vocative, so just like in English it means O. And then fiet, remember it's the further demonstrative with the relative. So fi is the masculine further demonstrative, meaning the masculine, something further that, usually we'll translate it as he or you, depending on the context. Et is the relative, which means who. Ami means to know. So it means, oh, you who know, or you who knows. Who knows what? In na mukmik. Mukmik are like thoughts. Na mukmik, it's the plural, possessive adjective, first person singular. So, oh, you who knows my thoughts. And then we talked about empatu. So don't confuse empatu with empav. Remember we talked about empav. That's the third person plural of the negative habitual. This is the third person plural of the tense that means before. So, and shopi means to happen or exist or occur. So, oh, you who knows my thoughts, empatu shopi, before they occur. And then we talked about how it means like before or not yet. So we can look at it in this example, and you can kind of see how the translation makes better sense. So empatu, so you can say before they, suen no ereyo. Suen comes from saun, means again also to know, just a different way to say it, to know. Nu ereyo. Ereyo means like selves, and nu is their or them. So their selves, themselves. So here they translated as each other. So empatu, suen, that means before they knew, or depending on the context, they can actually mean they have not yet known each other or themselves. So it really depends on the context to get the more precise translation. So before they knew each other, or they have not yet known each other. So empate, this tense can mean before or not yet, which basically means the same thing, but just in English, just to make it make sense in English, you might have to swap before or not yet. Okay, and then a couple more things here. So etre. So basically from here on out, we're going to focus on etre, and then it's going to have different prefixes. Here it's going to have the e. Here it's just going to have just the jinkim etre by itself. Here it's going to have khanib jeen. Here it's going to have impen as the prefixes, okay? But they're all going to be based off etre. They're all based off etre, okay? So where does etre come from? So when you look at it etymologically, that means kind of where it's derived from. Etre comes from, and this is just to help you understand it, because it's not, you'll never see it in this form, but this is just to understand where it comes from historically. T and iri. It's a combination that over the millennia in the ancient Egyptian language, by the time it made the Coptic, T and iri merged to etre. So what does that mean? T means to give, and iri means to make or be. So it's kind of a compound verb, and it's a causative. So it means to make or give, to be, or in other words, to cause to be or to cause to happen. Okay, so you can see where etre means to cause something or to make something happen, because it comes from T and iri. T and iri eventually through the millennia merges together and it becomes etre. So you can see etre and T iri. You can see how kind of that you can imagine over the millennia just kind of merge together. So in Coptic, you never see it in this form. You'll never, ever see it. It's only in this form. But this is where it's derived from etymologically and historically. So that's why it means to cause something. Okay? So, let's look at this one first because this is simpler. So etre, to cause. So look at this paradigm again, the model of the 6 boxes that we always talk about. Ethri, ethrik, ethre, ethrif, ethris, ethrin, ethritin, and ethru. Okay. And you can prefix it. Here they have it prefixed with the past tense, but you can have the future tense, or you can have other forms here that we'll talk about in a little bit. Khanab jeen and pen, etc. So off ethri, so it's going to turn to the past tense. So he caused me, or he made me. He caused you, he made you. And this can change. You can be like I ethric, or you can be like off ethri, or us ethri, or us ethris. This can give you so many different patterns, or so many different meanings depending on what you choose. So it's not always off ethre. It can be any of the past tense. Like it can be araten ethri, it could be anything. Or araten ethretin, it could be anything. It can also be the future tense, like tina ethric. Like you may know from the hymn, for the deacons there, if you know the hymn Intlotin there, it says tina ethretin hemsi nemi. There's 2 parts. It's tina ethretin nemi. And then there's tina Ethraten, MC, Mini. Those are both in that hymn. So Tina is the future. Tina, I will. Ethraten, cause you, plural, because it's Ethraten. I will cause you, or basically make you, u'um means to eat, nemi, with me. And it goes on Sahijan Tatrapeza upon my table. Tina ethraten, I will cause you to eat with me. Jesus is talking about his disciples in that hymn in Potende. Tina ethraten hemsi nami. I will cause you, or I will make you. Hemsi means to sit with me. Tina ethraten hemsi. So again, you can have this past tense. You can also have the habitual. I've seen habitual, like shaf ethri, or shas ethri. You can have that as well. So there's a lot of flexibility with this. When you have the e prefixed to it, and not just the jinkin, it's going to mean in order that. So you don't have a tense here. It's almost like you have the relative. So ethri-hos, it means in order that I sing. Etherek, in order that you. Ethre, and again, remember this second person singular feminine, that's kind of the same as the prenominal form. Ethref, ethres, ethren, ethreten, and ethru. So it's basically in order that or so that. Okay. So we know etheren hos erok is from what do you call it? From the verses of the symbols. So etheren hos erok, so that we, etheren. So it means so that we, or in order that we, hos erok, sing to you, erok. Etheren chi, or excuse me, ethref chi, so that he, ethref chi, so that he take or receive, or in order that he receive, M, P, the definite article, the baptisma. Baptisma is the baptism. In order that he receive or take the baptism. We know of ethrin shopi in Owed, that's from the from the liturgy. Of ethrin shopi, he caused us. Shopi means to be or become or to exist or to just to occur. So he caused us to become, and this is the present continuous, which I think we've alluded to a couple times. I can't remember if we actually took it formally as part of the class, but I've kind of alluded to it. But I'll talk about it a little bit today since we keep coming over it. So the present continuous means something is happening, a continuous happening at the present time. So present continuous. So he caused us to exist in Oweb, we being holy, or we being pure. Oweb means pure or holy. So that's what it means. So you're basically you basically add ing to the verb. So we being holy. So of Etheren Shopi, he caused us to be, or he caused us to exist, or he caused us to live, we being holy. So in other words, he caused us to become pure or holy. Impenethren. So impen, basically it's the equivalent of like imper. Remember, we talked about imper means do not, but whenever imper is prefixed to the causative, for whatever reason, it has to do with the assimilation, which is the just concept of like how to vocalize. You won't see it as a row; it'll be an n. So impen is the same thing as imper in this sense. So imper, impenetre, but you won't see it with the row; you'll see it with the n. Impenetren, soten. So do not. So same thing as imper. Do not cause us or allow us or permit us. Soten, to hear. So do not let us hear. Here they put do not let me, but it's actually us. Do not let us or do not cause us to hear. Okay. Now we've got these other prefixes. Actually, I kind of skipped over because this should have been down in the next section, but impen. Impen means the negative of the positive. Khenebjeen, you may know from like what's an example? There's some examples from the liturgy, like when Abuna says Khenebjeen etref hayde evol khen ti apati and tepigaji, something like that. Khenebjeen etref hayde. And gene height evol khen ti tepigaji. So ethref or ethref, is the causative. It's the masculine second person singular. And hey means to fall or to fail. So chen we know means in, at, by, with. Ep is the definite article. And gene is jin. So whenever you see jin, we talked about it, jin, it's like putting ing on the verb. The verb here is causing him to fall. So how are we going to translate this? Literally, it's going to be by the causing by the causing, you've got ing because it's jin up here. And causing because you have etre. By the causing of him to fall. Again, it's talking about the fall of Adam. By the causing of him to fall, the is a Greek word, that can mean but or and, just depending on the context. So we'll just leave that one out now. Sorry, this should be, I think it's Evol Hiten. Evol Hiten means, remember Evol means from, and Hiten means by or through. So we combine Evol Hiten as from through or from by. Ti apati is like the guile or the deceit. That's a Greek word. Ti apati, through the negative. I don't know. I can't remember the exact translation of the word again, but it's from the Greek word, from the deceit, inte of the pigaji. The gaji means enemy. So by the causing of him to fall, from through, or means upon the hands of, literally means from the hand of. So you can say by, you can just say through the deceit or by the deceit of the enemy. So in other words, how are you going to translate this? By the causing of him to fall, you can just say when he fell. So that's why you often see these things simplified quite a bit in English, just to make it mix a little bit more smoothness or flow more smooth in English. But really, you can see that the meaning is totally different. So they'll end up translating this as Khenebjeen ethref. You'd say when he fell through the guile of the serpent, or when he fell through the deceit of the enemy, something like that. But really, you can see it's chen, that's by, ep, jin, and hai. So the causing of him to fall by the trickery of the enemy. So you see, it's kind of a different meaning than just saying as when he fell, which is the things are just translated as. And actually, I was thinking, you guys can tell me what you think, but I was thinking next year's, because we're almost done with this semester, so I was thinking next year's a big project. Maybe we'll just go through the liturgy, you know, word by word and section by section and kind of break it all apart because, you know, we're done with all the basic grammar. So we'll go through it, you know, in extreme detail like we're doing to learn, you know, the real meaning behind the liturgy that we're attending every single day. So I was thinking that might be the third year project for the fifth and sixth semester. So if you guys like that idea or not or whatever, let me know. If you have any other things that you want to focus on next year, just let me know. So let's go back to the other screen here. So that's what khanabjeen means, okay? So khanabjeen ethri e, in the causing of me to come, or when I come. That's why they say just translate it as when. But, you know, you can see that, you know, because it's so cumbersome to say in the causing of me to come. You can't really say in the causing of me to come. It doesn't make sense. You know, it makes sense. You understand what it means, but it just does not, it's not smooth or it's not eloquent, I guess is the best way. So they say when. Khanabjeen ethrik, when you, or in the causing of you. Khanabjeen ethrik, etc. Khanabjeen. And where is it? It's the same thing. It's ethri, ethrek, ethre, ethref. It's the same thing like we took up here. Same exact thing. Ethri, ethrek, ethrek, ethri, ethrek, ethrek, etc. Same exact thing. But instead of the jinkim, or instead of the e, you're going to have khanabjeen prefixed to ethri. And the negative we talked about, impen, prefixed to the ethra. And impen, it's the same thing as imper, like impersaji, do not talk. Or, but if you're going to say, do not let me talk or do not allow me to talk, you say impen ethri saji instead of imper saji, means do not speak, like, you know, telling someone do not speak. You can say impenethri saji or impenethref saji, do not let him speak. And again, we don't have the second person because you can't have this type of negative positive. You can imagine, do not cause you. It's like telling someone you're telling someone do not cause you. So you don't really have this second person for this tense. It's like do not cause yourself. It doesn't make sense. You just say, if that's the case, you're going to say impersaji. If you're talking to someone in the second person. You wouldn't say impen ethrik saji. You wouldn't say that. You would just say imper saji. Okay, so here's some more examples. Khanabjeen ethran ohi, eraten, and pekemtho somatiko. So we know this from Tizbaha. Khanabjeen, in the causing of us, ohi eraten. So remember, ohi means to stand or wait. Eraten, rat, has to do with foot. And again, it's this first person plural. So in the causing of us to stand on foot, or in other words, when we stand or whenever we stand, impik emtho. So this is like the presence. In pik emtho, it means in your presence. Pik. Somatikos, it's a Greek word relating to soma, means body. So in the standing, in the causing us to stand on foot in your presence, fleshly, or in the flesh. So in other words, they, kind of trim it down. We say, when we stand before you with our bodies. And this is from the morning doxology, or the seven ways. Khanabjeen ethref inan echun in je'ef nav and shor. Khanabjeen ethref I nan echun. So Khanabjeen, in the causing of him to come, we'll skip over this, nan echun. In the causing of him to come, namely, if nav and shor. So shor means first or early. Nav is hour or time. So the hour early, or the early hour, in other words, the morning, if nav and shor. So in the causing of him to come, nan, to us, echun, to or towards. So in the causing of him to come to or towards us, namely, in the morning. So in other words, when the morning comes to us, okay, so that's it for today's lesson. So we can just kind of go through some things like we normally do. And I figured that we're getting very close to Good Friday. So we can start going through and translating. It's one of my favorite hymns. It's fully in Coptic. I mean, there's some Greek parts, but it's really one of my favorite hymns. So I figure we'll pick this one to start with here in this next for the next couple of weeks. This is the hymn of Golgotha, which is the concluding canon for Good Friday. So it's pretty easy, but it has a lot of basic grammar and basic stuff that we've taken. So that's why another reason I wanted to pick this. Okay. So Golgotha, that's just a proper noun. It's just a name. It's a Golgotha. It's a Golgotha. Met Hebreos. Hebreos, you can see that's the word for Hebrews. Hebrews. Met Hebreos. Remember, so met means the state or condition of something. So the state or condition of being Hebrew. So in other words, Golgotha, in the state or condition of being Hebrew. P, ekranion, so the kranion, M, met, Owainim. Owainim, it means Greek or Greece. So Golgotha, in the state or condition of being Hebrew, or in other words, it means in the Hebrew language. Or the ekranion, the kranion, in the state or condition of being Greek, or in other words, in the Greek language. So the first two lines of Golgotha are saying Golgotha in Hebrew and kranion in Greek. So basically, it's talking about the mountain, Calvary, where Jesus was crucified. And just in case, it means the skull. So Golgotha means the skull in Hebrew, and a kranion is like a cranium. You've heard of the word cranium. Especially if people are in the medical field, cranium. It's the Greek word for skull also. So same thing with Calvary. Calvary, it comes from calvarium, which is the Latin word for skull. So Calvary, cranion, and Golgotha just means the skull in different languages, the mountain of the skull. So Golgotha in Hebrew, cranion in Greek. Pima, remember ma is place, so Pima, the place. It, the relative, remember, which? Of, eshk. That's the past tense, right? Of is the third person plural past tense. Of, eshk. Eshk comes from the word ishi. Ishi is the full infinitive form. But when it's in the pronominal form, again, pronominal means pronoun. So it's in the pronominal form. It's going to be in this form, eshk. The place which they, past tense, they hung you. So ishi literally means to hang. It doesn't mean crucify, but we know what's understood as crucify because we know he was hung on the cross. But literally ishi means to hang. So the place which they hung you, if choice. Again, this is just a typo here. This shouldn't be this number 8 here. This is just a typo on the Habitual website. If choice, Lord. Or oh Lord, it literally means the Lord, but we say it in the vocative sense. Vocative means like making an invocation or a prayer or calling out. So the place which they hung you, O Lord, in chit. And chit, remember, comes from chen. Remember when you say, instead of, you can't say like chen immuth, there's no such thing. So chen, when you're talking about in something, it goes from, it's conjugated into enchit, enchit, enchiti, enchit, enchits, enchiten, chentino, and enchito. So in this case, it's enchit, so it's the third person singular masculine. So the place which they hung you, O Lord, in him, but there's no him because it's the mountain, so it's in it. Remember, there's no it in Coptic. Akforsh, forsh means to spread. So akforsh, past tense, you spread in, that's just the linking particle again, nik jig. Jig means hand. Nik jig is the plural, possessive adjective in the second person singular. So it means your, hands, because it's plural, so nikji. So you spread your hands, evol. Remember, means to, and vol means kind of like out or away. So you spread your hands out. Of ishi, remember ishi is the full infinitive form of ash. This is the pre-pronominal form. Same word, just in different forms. So see how there's no suffix pronoun like a kappa or a phi, etc. This is just the full form. So of ishi, and actually I think this is a typo. I think this should be an epsilon. And it should be of ishi, if I'm not mistaken. So they, it should be they because I think it's just a typographical error. Of ishi, they hung nimak with you, nimak, and linking particle, ke soni. So soni means thief. If this was an O, the one that looks like a W, soni means sister. So you have to know the difference between soni and soni. You know, when you're saying it, you can't tell. When you're seeing it, you can. So soni with an O is thief. Soni with a omega or the W shape is sister. So of ishi, remember this should be an epsilon. Of ishi, they hung with you, thief. And what does ke mean? Ke can mean other or also. So in this sense, you know, it doesn't mean other because, you know, Christ was not a thief, so it doesn't mean they hung with you other thieves. No, they hung with you thieves also. So ke means other or also. So they also hung with you thieves, isnav, two. So they also hung with you two thieves. Sa, tik, owinam. Remember owinam? It's easy to remember because owinam is almost like yamin. It means right. So tik owinam, and it means your right. Sa, remember, means a location. So at the location of your right. So in other words, at your right hand. It doesn't say hand, but we just, you know, just for simplicity's sake, we say at your right hand. But literally, the best thing would be to say at your right. Okay. So they, remember, because it's of ishi, not of ishi. This should be an epsilon. Of ishi, they hung with you. Also, thief, two. So they hung with you also two thieves. At your right, nim, and sa, tik, gachi. So gachi is jinga, alpha, chima, and eta. There's no t. This is a typo here too. So there's no tav here. So they made a lot of typos on the tisvad.org website. There's no tav. So satik gachi. So at your left. So they hung with you, two thieves, at your right and at your left. In thok, ek, so the pronoun you, ek ki. So remember, this is the present continuous. So we just talked about it a little bit today. I can't remember if we, like I said, I can't remember if we talked about it fully, but I'll tell you. So the present continuous, it's gonna go in this pattern. A, let me change it to top 6. Let's see what the, A, tick, F, S, N, N, F. Okay. So it's this. It's gonna again following the same pattern, but it's just the E with the iota. So it's almost like the past tense. Remember, the past tense has an alpha. So remember, the past tense is I, of, us, etc. But the present continuous is a, ik, ere, f, s, n, ereten, ev. So same exact thing as the past tense, except you're changing the alpha to an e. And the other thing you want to pay attention to is ere. It's going to be the exact same thing as ere in the definitive future that we talked about. So remember, the a, and ik, ere doesn't have an it's assimilated together. So remember, so it's going to be the exact. It's going to look the exact same. for the second person feminine. So because of that, you have to pay attention to the context in certain instances to be able to differentiate them. Okay. So what does the present continuous mean? It means something, like I said, it's something that's happening presently in a continuous fashion. So in other words, like if you're going to say a moshi, so it means I walking, as opposed to t moshi. So what's the difference between like a moshi and t moshi? So a moshi versus t moshi means I walking versus I walk. So we'll see what it means here coming up soon. Okay. So basically, when you see the present continuous, you're going to add ing to the verb and then the person. So I walking. Okay. So in thok, ek ki. Remember, ki means has to do with like something being in a certain position or place. So you being, you being set or you being placed or you placed. It has to do with being like a certain position, to put something or place something. So you placed. So satik oinam, so it means at your right and at your left. You in thok ek ki. You being placed. Chen tu miti. Chen means in. Tu, again, it's a possessive adjective. Again, there. Miti. What's miti? Miti is the midst or middle. So you being placed, because it's present continuous, you being placed in their midst or in their middle. O, the vocative, just an invocation, O. Pi sotir, the savior. And agathos, good, the good savior. So let's put it all together. Golgotha in Hebrew, the cranion in Greek, the place which they hung you, O Lord, in it. You spread your hands out. They hung with you, also 2 thieves, at your right and at your left, you being placed in their midst, or in the middle of them. O Savior good, O good Savior. Okay? And then Book 3. Glory be to the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. That's Greek, so we won't really. Actually, that's another typo. That says doze, and it should be doze. Okay, so let's do another verse here. Of Osh Evol, remember Osh has a lot of different meanings. Osh can mean a promise. Osh can mean a reading or a lesson. Osh can mean also to cry out or say something loudly. So past tense, he cried, Evol. It doesn't mean to cry with tears, but it means cry doesn't mean having like a loud voice or screaming. So because cry with like tears coming out of your eye, like weeping is rim. So when we say cry, we don't mean cry with tears. We mean cry like cry out. So of Osh Evol, he cried out, of Osh Evol, in Je Pisoni, namely the thief, remember, because Pisoni, with an O instead of Pisoni, it wouldn't be Pisoni, it would be T-Soni, because sister is feminine. So that's another clue that you know that Pisoni means the thief, masculine. Because if this meant sister and had an omega here, it would be T-Soni. So anyway, so of Osh Evol and Je Pisoni, he cried out, namely the thief, Et Sa'oinam, which, again, it's a relative, so it means which, Sa, at, right hand thief. It doesn't say at your right, it says at the right hand, or at the right, or which is at the right side. So he cried out, namely the thief, which is at the right. If go, again, the present continuous. So remember, so you're going to see present continuous all the time. The thief at your right, he saying her. There's no her because it's it. He's saying her, it. So he cried out, namely the thief at your right hand, he saying it, or in other words, saying, Je. Remember when you have if go emos or if gos, it's going to have the je is like the quotation mark, open quotation. Ari pamedi. So ari is the imperative of iri. So in other words, it's the command form of to do or make. So telling Jesus to do or make, pamedi, my thought. Make my thought, or in other words, remember me. Ari pamedi, remember me. O pashois, my Lord. Ari pamevi, O pasotir. Remember me, O my sotir Savior. Ari pamevi, remember me, O my King. Akshan I, this is the conditional, so it means upon the condition. So remember me, O my King, upon the condition of you, because it's akshan. So upon the condition of you coming, chen in, tik your mit uru, state of being a king, or condition of being a king, or in other words, the kingdom or kingship. So upon the condition of you coming into your kingship or kingdom. So remember me when you enter your kingdom. Okay. Af'er u'o naf. So u'o is like a report or news or information. So er'u is to give a report or give news or give information. In other words, it means he answered or he replied. So af'er'u. So he replied to him, af'er'u naf, namely the Lord, in Jacob choice. So he replied to him, namely the Lord, Khen u ismi, in at by with, u ismi is a voice, so with a voice, emet rimrafsh. Rimrafsh means kind of like meek or gentle. So in a state of being gentle. So in other words, with a meek or gentle or soft voice. So he replied to him, namely the Lord, with a meek or gentle voice. Je, again, open quotations. It doesn't say goemos, but you understood Je. This is what he's saying. Is af erunaf Je. So Je goes, to the after af erunaf. So he replied to him, Emfa'u. Emfa'u means today. Emfa'u. It comes from the word eha'u. Ik eshopi. So remember, ik eshopi is the definitive future. So remember, definitive. Remember, we talked about that. Means it will definitely happen. This is going to happen for sure. Ik eshopi. You shall. Shopi means to dwell, live, exist, occur, happen. But in this case, obviously means you will be or exist. You will be nemi with me. Enahri, chen. Enahri means an upwards direction, so up in, as opposed to enechri, because enechri would mean down in, but enahri means upwards direction. So up in my meturu, my kingship or my kingdom. So today you shall, because remember it's the definitive future now. It's not just regular future. You shall. This is definitely going to happen. You shall be with me up in my kingdom. And then we say Kenin, Kenin, now and forever until the age of ages. Amen. Again, that's the Greek. So, okay. So I guess that's probably good for today. Again, if anybody has any questions, I don't know, Bishwa, if anybody has any questions, we can answer them now. Otherwise, we can go ahead and conclude here. And then we'll pick up next time with E and J details and the next lesson. So.
Hey, thanks, Joe. There's no questions, but if you have any questions, please submit them on the form. With that being said, Joe, you could conclude us with prayer, please.
Okay. Get back to the Lord's Prayer here. So, Chanavran Miviot, Nimibshiri, and Pepnivma Thawab, Onotina Ut Amin. J Pinyot, Tchani Fiowi, Marif Tuvu, and J Bekran, Marif Ian Jitik Muturu. Peter هناك معرف شوبي المفريتي خانت فاه نام هيجان بيكاهي Pin oik enterasti, mif non emfau, awoka niet eron non evil, emefriti honen tinko evil, en ni ete awon ton erou. Awo emperenten afone perasmos, alla nahmen evil hapi petou. Gen bi Christos Isos ben choice, Jethok te timet uru, nem tigom, nem piau, shainen tiniene, tiro amin. Genevrana me biot, nem bshiri, nem bednem matawab, unoti noot amin. Okay, thanks everybody, and have a good night. And if you have any questions or anything, just let us know.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you guys next week at 9, same time. Have a good night. Bye.